The New Age healing and spiritual communities have become safe havens for narcissists. And if you don't listen to what I'm about to tell you, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Now, you might be asking yourself, how do I know all this? How could I be so sure that narcissists have taken over these spaces? First-hand experience. I started a healing journey with good intentions. I just wanted to heal. And I was feeling lost, so I was looking for guidance as well. I hit a wall with Western medicine. And when trying these alternative healing modalities, I made a lot of progress in a short amount of time, and that was amazing. And I eventually learned some of them because I wanted to help others the way I had been helped. But I went in with the false assumption that because I wanted to help others, that's why everyone else would get into something like that as well. Wrong. Turns out that led to a very rude awakening, both for me and some people I had become friends with over the years. And you might be wondering, well, why would narcissists be attracted to healing, which involves helping others, and spirituality, which you think is also involves helping others? And that's what they are in theory. And there is some of that. There is the real McCoy. I definitely met a lot of people on my healing journey that really made a big difference in my life. And from what I've heard, I've certainly helped a lot of people transform their lives for the better as well. But on the other hand, there is stuff you certainly want to be wary of. It's starting to actually come to light now, but up until recently, it was discouraged to point it out or speak up. It was kind of like the emperor's new clothes. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But before that, I want to get back into exploring why a narcissist would be attracted to becoming a healer or spiritual person, or I should more appropriately say, acting like one or appearing like one. To tell you the truth, I don't think a lot of them get into it immediately to just take advantage of people. They're not necessarily psychopaths. And there, of course, could be a few exceptions, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that. Here's the reason why. Like pretty much anyone who starts a healing journey, they're damaged in some way. And there's nothing wrong with that. I was too. It's perfectly okay to know you're damaged as long as you take accountability for your healing and turn it around like I did and others do. But narcissists don't like to take accountability. And I think once they enter these spaces, they realized that there's some easy targets for them because some of these people are in so much pain, whether it's physically or especially mentally, that they're willing to try just about anything for relief to help turn it around. And narcissists, being snake oil salespeople, this is a perfect opportunity for them. And narcissists, especially the communal ones, not all of them, but the more alpha type, they tend to like to form some type of cult. In this type of spiritual community, it's not as powerful and dangerous as some of the really big ones that have been exposed, but they can have smaller ones. and that appear to not be as harmful. And because they could have that even friendlier appearance, that could actually be more dangerous in the long term because it's harder to detect. And people are more likely to ignore their natural instincts, telling them that something's off and to get out. These cults don't even have to be in person. There are spiritual social influencers that are able to form the equivalent, and they can be damaging as well. I've observed in response to why a narcissist would want this type of platform, want to project this type of image. Well, mainly because it's the perfect fake public persona that they crave. And to convince themselves even that they're very nice and good people. We generally associate as a whole someone who's spiritual as a good person, that they're generous, that they're kind, that they always have good intentions. They're always trying to improve themselves and do the right thing. That's fantasy, though. I mean, that's what spirituality should be. But is it like that 100% of the time? Absolutely not. Satanists are spiritual, technically speaking. And when someone has the spiritual persona, but they're really a bad person, it gives an opportunity to blindside potential victims. They're less likely to see it coming because not many people associate the atrocious closed-door behavior of narcissists with a nice, bubbly, friendly, new age spiritual persona. But they're out there. And the sad thing is, from what I've experienced, it's the majority of them. If they've seen a spiritual influencer, chances are they're a narcissist. I hate to say it, but that has been my experience. And I don't just say things for the heck of it. So you have these gurus and healers masquerading as these enlightened beings. And that's another reason why covert narcissists are attracted to the spiritual field. If you've ever seen a list of covert narcissistic traits, appearing enlightened is frequently one of them. Narcissists are also great plagiarizers. It's very easy for them in today's age to see someone else's material, then take the best parts of it as their own, and then make a post or a video about it, and just adding like some of their own observations and material to it. Then their followers will be like, oh, wow, you're so wise. You enlightened spiritual master, you. Wow. And they get supply from that. They love it because they get to fool so many people and it gives them so much of a high. And the problem is with these types is they haven't lived it. They can cognitively understand it, but they haven't felt what it means to embody these experiences that they talk about or actually put them into practice, especially for the long term. Maybe they, tried it once just to get some grasp of it, but that could be just about it. This actually happened at a monastery a friend of mine was a monk at for a long time. And during a Q&A period, and a visitor asked the abbot about a heart-centered or focused meditation, a loving-kindness meditation. And this visitor was very perceptive because he noticed the abbot described it cognitively, but he sensed an absence of feeling and emotion from it. Like the abbot didn't actually know what it felt like to experience that. Most people would pass that up, but he sensed that. And that's exactly what it is when these spiritual narcissists talk about something. But most people will either not notice it or they'll just pass it off, give the person the benefit of the doubt, because there's usually so many people around that are just agreeing with the spiritual narcissist. And that leads to what type of narcissists are attracted to the spiritual and healing fields. I've actually found 3 main ones, but really 4. But the 4th one can kind of be included in the other 3, which I'll get into. But the main types are 1, the typical store-bought overt narcissist, which are actually probably the rarest in the New Age spiritual field. Then, secondly, the covert narcissist, which I think there are the most of. And then the vulnerable narcissist. I know a lot of professionals lump the vulnerable in with the covert narcissist, and there are certainly some similarities, but this is where I disagree because having seen the vulnerable up close and in depth, at least how they pertain to the healing field, I have noticed some differences. The 4th one I was going to say is the communal narcissist, and they can be separate or they can be lumped in with the other 3, because the other 3 can certainly have an element of the communal narcissist in them. But then I guess you could argue about that for some of the others as well. But, well, I'll start with that then, because the communal narcissist in the healing and spiritual communities, they're the ones that are about just that. They're always organizing those big events and just try to get the, quote, community together. They love seeing the community come together. And when I started, I was all about that because there's a theory that we can really heal better when we're in community, that we can avoid depression better, or people that are contemplating suicide. When you're in a community, there's people that, in theory, would care about you and lift you up when you fall down. But that's where it stops, because what I found after going to many of these events and fairs and all these things that they put on in group settings, that the community was horrible and it was terrifying. It had the exact opposite effect it should have. When the indigenous were communities, it was a completely different thing. Like, that's how it's supposed to be. But unfortunately, in our society, there's a lot of terrible people out there that to talk a good game about forming communities, but then when you actually get there, enter to them, it's a whole completely different story. The overt spiritual narcissist will generally be the speakers, the ones that do form the organizations that, as referenced before, can develop those cult-like followings, where there's people expressing devotion to the teachings or whatever lineage they're studying on. The overt narcissists love this because the spiritual and healing communities are very easy places to find flying monkeys. And this is why it's been so hard for a lot of abuse victims to speak up, because one, the narcissist gets that pristine fake public persona. Two, then they'll have lots of loyal supporters who will say, oh, no, I could never see them do something like that. Or, no, that would happen. We would have seen it. It's very dangerous because it's so hard to go up against situations and types like that. No, they might not be as physically dangerous as some organizations and narcissists that are very powerful and wealthy, but it can be really scary to have to go up against something like that nonetheless. Now, the covert narcissists, these are the main ones in the healing community for sure, and spiritual one as well. I didn't know what they were before my healing journey or spiritual awakening. I considered myself, and still do, but especially more so, I was your typical one at the beginning of my healing odyssey, an empath. I was just your stereotypical empath. Now I'm an empowered empath, which is a completely different story. But at the beginning, while there were a lot of good qualities to me, I also had all the negative qualities, which can really lead to being taken advantage of. After my first encounter with a covert narcissist, I was stupefied because I was thinking, how am I ever going to be able to differentiate a covert narcissist with an empath? Because a covert narcissist can come off just like an empath right at the beginning. So that was a very horrible thought to consider, and I didn't know what to do at that point. Thankfully, I found out over the next couple years after that experience that you actually can distinguish the covert narcissists early on and relatively easily. They do give off tells, and just like the overt ones, they have a lot of the same patterns, which thankfully was very beneficial to learn, and I highly recommend people do so because your life gets exponentially better when you can pick them off right from the beginning. Last is the vulnerable narcissist. These are strange creatures for sure. And the way I detected them in a healing capacity was they would just like to display fake, exaggerated emotions. And they would share too much, too fast in an uncomfortable way. Now, I know if you don't know what I mean, you could mistake that or confuse that with an empath who just is so genuine. They're up for sharing their story and personal details right up front, over-explaining, oversharing, those types of things. But I'm not talking about that. They'll just blurt out something horrible that happened to them at a very inappropriate time, then display this heightened emotional outburst where you just feel something's off. But if you're not trained for it, you'll feel bad stopping someone when they're crying because you're thinking, oh, good, they're releasing, they're healing trauma. And in some scenarios, that's certainly the case. But what you notice about these types is they'll do it for the same thing over and over again. And if you know someone else they go to, they'll do the exact same thing for them. So it's not like just something that someone's avoided, finally comes up to the surface and they pass it out. They just have this story and this act they just do over and over again to gain sympathy, which they get supply from. And when I mean they have an emotional display, they can go on for a while. I've seen a vulnerable narcissist cry and scream for 30 to 40 minutes. It just goes on. What you said is too long. You get to the point where you don't feel the emotion matches what they were talking about anymore. There was also another example of this where I was co-facilitating with a female healer. And one of the recipients of the group ceremony was making some reactions, making some displays like, oh, he was really going through it, all this. And then just making some sounds like he was releasing. I noticed when the female co-facilitator was working with someone else, he would slyly glance up and trying to observe if she was focusing on him anymore. He was trying to get her attention because before that, she had given some words of acknowledgments like, oh, good job. But then when she went past him, he was getting frustrated. He was looking over, like doing those noises and just kind of squirming a bit when it wasn't working. That's what a vulnerable narcissist is after, just acknowledgement. And they think that by getting praise and admiration from a healer or spiritual leader, that's their supply, that's their energy source. It's one of the strangest things, but I've seen it and I've heard other people witness this as well. And that's why the vulnerable narcissist is attracted to, especially the healing communities. They won't necessarily be leading, but they really like to get involved. And they're perfect for fake healers to promote, especially on their social media or websites. I really think if you've ever seen these energy healing sessions where the recipient just shakes, starts convulsing, pretty much in a sexual manner, I think that's a vulnerable narcissist. The person facilitating these healings is probably the overt or covert in their overt cycle narcissist. And I also think they're pre-screened. They probably had an event or private session where the vulnerable narcissist went nuts. They were acting and very performative. And then the lead narcissist healer asked the vulnerable narcissist, hey, if you let me record a video of this, I'll give you a free session or something like that. So that's why I think they have kind of a symbiotic relationship. The more overt narcissist gets more business and more promotional materials, and the vulnerable narcissist will get supply from people witnessing all their healing and transformation. that really is only short-lived. Which brings me to the ultimate reason why narcissists are attracted to the healing and spiritual communities. It's very easy for them to avoid accountability. I've seen so many comment sections where one or two people seem to finally start to figure the narcissist out. In a polite way, begin to call them out. But the spiritual narcissists are amazing at being able to turn the tables in the conversation. The first way they'll do this is through gaslighting. They'll make the person wondering about the validity of what the spiritual influencer is expressing, question themselves by using tried and true techniques, like saying, oh, that's not what happened, or you must have missed the point. That's typical, par for the course. But they also use spiritual terms like, oh, you must just not be on my frequency. Or I guess your kundalini isn't activated yet, because anyone whose is would certainly understand what I'm expressing. Second, and the main one, is projection. And they'll do projection by saying the other person is projecting. Like, oh, this must be an issue that you're actually experiencing, but you're saying that I'm doing, or is something wrong with me? And a lot of the times, the original person that commented or questioned it will be like, oh, yeah, no, you're right, I'm sorry. And I'm like, what? It's such an easy way for narcissists to get control of conversations on these spiritual topics. So these spiritual narcissists are able to weaponize therapeutic language, especially as it pertains to narcissists. And third, but certainly not least, they'll just say, hey, what you're saying isn't very spiritual of you, using an image of what a lot of people think a spiritual person is supposed to look like to shut down any attacks. And it works because, unfortunately, and this is still true, a lot of people think of just the love and light side of New Age spirituality. But real spirituality is also big on knowing your worth and setting boundaries and not putting up with toxic or abusive behaviors. The people that aren't up to speed on what real healing is because they're new or they haven't reached that level can easily fall victim to this, unfortunately. Due to all these factors, the narcissists have been able to take over the New Age spirituality and alternative healing communities. If you've noticed or experienced any of these situations, be sure to comment as well. I'll continue to share my tips, strategies, and pointers for dealing with people with NPD, so the next time you'll be missed by the narcissist.